सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। प्रातस्मरामि हृदि संस्फुरतात्मतत्त्वं सच्चित्सुखं परमहंसगतिं तुरीयम्। यस्वप्नजागरसुषुप्तमवैति नित्यं तद्ब्रह्म निष्कलमहं न च भूतसङ्गः। First of all, thank you for coming to this evening's lecture. Some of you I cannot see because of this. In spite of this being summer, usually in summers we do not have classes, but this is a special program arranged by CM Yoganjali. You know, all our programs end with the Anjali. Kalanjali, Sevanjali, Yoganjali, Swaranjali, and we are going to talk about Patanjali. Anjali means salutations. When you keep your hands like this is salutation, namaskar. But when you do like this, where the hand is like in the offering mode, not salutation, but in an offering, that is called Anjali. So when you have some flowers and when you offer it like this, it's called Pushpanjali. When you have a lamp, you might have seen the lamps that we, outside also we have. The lady with the lamp like this, that is called Deepanjali. Anjali is therefore not really salutation, it is an offering. So therefore most of our actions should be in the form of offerings. So we are going to talk about Pata Anjali. Meaning, Sanskrit word Pata means that which has fallen. Fallen means it is coming down or prostrating. So it is said that when you stand erect, your shadow is also as long as you are. Your shadow representing your ego. So when you stand in front of the Lord, your ego is as strong as you are. When you sit down, to that extent the ego is reduced. When you prostrate in front of the Lord, your ego is completely gone. So Patanjali is falling at the feet of the Lord. Now, this series of talks, we will not be able to finish all the sutras, as you all know. There are almost 194 sutras, 196 I think. First, Samadhipada has got 51 sutras, Sadhanapada has got 55, Vibhudipada has got 56, and Kaivalyapada has got 34. So now you calculate. 51, 55, 56 and 34, which is roughly around 111, 162, 196. So 196 sutras are there, and each sutra is such an important one, each one of them. The very word sutra means like a formula, aphorism. They have so much of potential information contained in it, like a small seed which has the entire tree in it, potentially can become a huge tree, but it's all hidden. In the same way, sutra is that which has potentiality of so much, when you start explaining it expands. So we will see mainly the Sadhanapada, as many sutras as possible, and later on at some other occasion we can expand more of them. Now, one may ask this question, why do we need to study this when we are studying Vedanta? Essentially, in Chinmaya Mission, we study Vedanta, that is known as the Upanishads. Vedanto nama Upanishad Pramanam. What is said, discussed in Upanishads is known as Vedanta. That is, at the end of Vedas, what is said as a philosophical portion of Vedas is called Vedanta. It is also known as Uttara Mimamsa. The Vedas are Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa. Purva means the front portion, which has the discussions about Brahmanas, mantra, rituals, etc. Then Uttara Mimamsa is the later portion, that is about philosophy, discussion about metaphysics. So why do we need to learn, those who are studying Vedanta, Uttara Mimamsa, why do we need to study about yoga? It's a good question. Now let us therefore start with, where does yoga originate? Most of us who are in this part of the world know only yoga as a physical action or physical practices in the form of asana, pranayama, all those things. The very word yoga means to unite. That's the Sanskrit word yuj. Yuj is the root word for that, which is for yoga. It's from there only. It's like bhuj, when you say to eat or experience, becomes bhoga. Book become bhoga. Book, that is not book, reading book. Bhuj, to experience. Bhojanam, in Tamil, bhojanam means to eat. That comes from the same root. Yojanam means to engage. Like bhuj is to bhoga, yuj is to yoga. So yojanam is to engage, to practice, ultimately to unite with the higher self. Now this is common in all Eastern religious philosophies. What we find is that in the Vedas, the ultimate thing that we have to experience, realize is called Brahman, the self. So the main teaching in Vedanta is about moksha, realization, enlightenment, which is to unite with the highest self, supreme self, Brahman. That is the Vedic perception of ultimate goal of human life. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Among the four goals of life, moksha, liberation, is to realize ultimate self, the highest self, the supreme self, Brahman. Non-Vedic traditions are not about Brahman. For even Buddhist tradition does not talk about Brahman. So also Sankhya and Yoga. Sankhya Darshan is one of the 6 schools of philosophies in India. These schools of philosophies are many in India, but very well known are the Sankhyan one. Somebody is correcting. Okay. The very word Sankhya means Samyak Jayate, very well explained. This Sankhya Yoga is not part of Vedas. It is a non-Vedic tradition. But what we find in Bhagavad Gita, it is very well used. In fact, the 2nd chapter itself is Sankhya Yoga. Because in the Vedic tradition, the concept of Trigunas are not there. If you carefully study Upanishads. Upanishad does not talk about gunas. So therefore, the later thinkers of the Eastern origin, they found out that the human existence is pretty much controlled by various elements that are in play. Like our own human mind, when you take how many different moods it goes through every day. From morning till evening, you just observe one day, so many different moods. Sometimes happy, sometimes upset, sometimes angry, sometimes very able to think and plan and execute very well. We are calm and quiet. Sometimes we are not able to think properly. We are so agitated, distracted. Sometimes very lazy, lethargic, sleepy. Not only because of the external conditions in which we live, but also our own mind can bring about certain such moods. So observing the human aspect, human mind, the later thinkers have understood that there is something which is working within me. Unless I conquer that, unless I master that, it is difficult for me to proceed further in my final goal, whatever it is, even in the human achievements. So therefore, what we find is, the Sankhyan philosophy is about Purusha and Prakriti, spirit and matter. Though Vedic tradition do not believe that matter has got a realistic existence, it is only apparent. According to Vedantic tradition, Vedanta says, the world is not real, it is appearance, an apparent thing. It's relative reality. But you and I do not feel that way. Though the philosophy is no doubt very lofty, very appealing to any human intellect. But when it comes to daily experiences in life, what we find is, we have to interact with people around us and we have to deal with our own mind. Therefore, they have understood that this phenomenal world that we interact with, including our own mind and thoughts, are to be regarded as the realm of matter. And the one who is dealing with this is the Purusha. So this idea of Purusha, who is not matter but has to deal with matter, is the one has to realize itself as independent of matter. Let me reword it properly for you. So long as we deal with the matter, we are going to be influenced by matter. However much you try to run away from it, you have to deal with matter and it will influence you. Krishna also says, Matra sparshasta kaunteya shida ushna sukha dukkha daha. So long as you deal with the matter, it will give you joy, unhappiness, success and failure, heat and cold. Agamapayino anityaha. Understand them to be impermanent. Tanti dikshasva. Therefore, bear with them. Don't run away from them. Bear with them. Tolerate them. Now it is hot. You can't help it. You put the AC on, so you are fine. Right? So the AC is not working, then you have to suffer through it. If your wife or husband is dealing, you are able to adjust with you, they are able to adjust with you, they are fine. You are not able to adjust, then you have to tolerate or run away, walk away, whatever. So you cannot avoid that. You have to titiksha, you have to tolerate. So also with your children, with your boss, with your subordinates, with your friends. So the matter has its own peculiarities and it will keep changing its nature. Therefore, we find that the matter which we are dealing with, which has its own peculiarities, some changes, being experienced by the individual, and the individual must become independent of the influences of the matter. Purushaha prakritisto hi bhungte prakritijan gunan. Krishna explains in 13th chapter. Purusha, the spirit, prakritistaha, staying in the matter, bhungte, experiences, prakritijan, born out of matter, gunan, qualities. Karanam, cause being, gunasangaha, association with matter. Now this is the foundation of Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga therefore says there are two things, Purusha and Prakriti, spirit and matter. Now you can explore yourself as you are sitting quietly, even in meditation or you are doing yoga, physical yoga, asanas you are doing. Who is doing? Me. What am I doing? I am bending my body. I am straightening my body. So, who is doing it? Me, the Purusha, who is now engaged in making the matter work according to my wish. When you are sitting in asana, after some time, it's pain here, pain there. What? The matter has its own peculiarity. It cannot stay for a long time like the same condition. So you will have pain, back pain or some other pain there and strain here. Though you don't want it. Who doesn't want it? Me, the Purusha. And I am lodged or I am being imprisoned in this matter. As though. And therefore, I have to make sure that the matter, the body in this situation, the body, the matter has to be made flexible enough so that I can slowly pay less and less attention on this Prakriti matter. Is it not? This is not the skill that we are trying to develop in yoga. Pratyahara, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, where you are concentrating yourself away from the Prakriti matter, then samadhi, dhyanam and samadhi. Alright, so now, according to Sankhyan philosophy, the matter is known as Prakriti, and the spirit that is lodged or related to this Prakriti is Purusha. And the Prakriti has three different qualities, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. This, as I said, you don't find in the Upanishads. You will find in Gita plenty. As Gita is a later contribution to the philosophy from the Eastern world, and Vyasa has pretty much used the philosophy of Sankhya in his teaching of Vedanta. Now what is yoga then? Sankhya is a theory, yoga is a practice. That is all the difference here. They are twins. A theory part of it is known as Sankhya. Samyak Ayade, as I said, well explained. And yoga is how to put that theory into practice. Now many of us are very satisfied with the theoretical aspect itself, and we are fine, we understand. But then we are not able to really experience the result of the theory in our life, and therefore it is necessary for us to understand how this understanding of three qualities of the matter which is influencing my mind can be overcome through some means, some method. This Sankhyan philosophy is attributed to Kapila, a great master who had observed the phenomenal world and has come up with this well classified understanding that the whole world is these five elements: space, air, fire, water and earth. These whole five elements are also having behavior of the three aspects: Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. So the whole classification of the whole world is, there are Tamasic, gross aspect of the matter, which is the world, physical matter. And the Rajasic, active part of this Prakriti, matter, is that which makes everything activated, like prana in our body. All the karma indriyas, speech, legs or locomotion, speech, hands or hand, locomotion, procreation and rejection. These five activities that are there in our body are Rajasic activity, belong to the Rajasic aspect of Prakriti. And also it includes Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. That is inhalation and pushing the air that pushes downwards, air that pushes upwards, Prana, Apana, and that which spreads all over the body, Vyana, Samana, that digests the food. This is the Rajasic aspect. Active part of Prakriti. Gross, non-active part of Prakriti is literal matter like stone or anything that is made of matter. Physically you can touch, feel. That is the Tamasic aspect. Anything that is actively engaging in this world, that is Rajas. That which is at the subtlemost level is Sattva. Like the thinking, emotions, feelings. This is the Sattvic aspect of the Prakriti or matter. So matter is broadly classified into gross matter, active matter and thinking matter. The one which is able to understand or observe. Now, so this is the Sankhyan theory. It applies to the whole world outside, applies to us as individuals. In our own body, this physical body which you and I can feel physically, that is tamas, the gross matter. Breathing, activities that is going on, it is rajas. And the one who is observing, able to observe this, the observing capacity, the skill, the intelligence, the emotion, that is the sattvic aspect. Alright. Now having understood this, that's the Sankhyan. He classified everything, and then Purusha is the inactive. Not that inactive means inert, but doesn't engage in action. He witnesses without making any effort to change anything. Only the witness, observer, mute, lively and holy presence. That is Purusha. Now the difference here is, in Vedanta, this consciousness, this Purusha is referred as Brahman, in the individual referred as Atman, in collectively known as the one holy presence Brahman. But the matter is not real. So Brahman appearing to be the whole world is the matter. Sankhya's don't believe that. Sankhya says matter is, Prakriti is independent of Purusha, but cannot act independently. Without the presence of Purusha, the lively presence, Prakriti cannot do anything. Whereas in the Vedantic tradition, Purusha is Brahman and he himself or it itself is behaving, appearing as this whole universe. So in Sankhyan philosophy, there is no role of God. Please note that. It is very close to science. Because science also does not believe in existence of God. It says matter is there, spirit is. Spirit they don't believe, but it is, because according to them, spirit is nothing but a combination of a peculiar combination of matter itself. Because if they have to believe in the existence of spirit, independent of matter, they have to show where it has come from. And what is the origin of it. And why it is behaving, how the way it is behaving. Alright. So, in the Sankhyan system, the Ishvara, it is called Anishvaravada. And Purusha and Prakriti are both eternal, timeless, anadi, beginningless. Because if they have an origin, then you have to talk about where is it originated from. Here is where Krishna makes a difference. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, both of them are anadi, meaning beginningless. Purusham prakritim saiva vidyanadi ubhau api. Both of them are anadi, beginningless. Because the common point is God. It's like two hands. This is as much beginningless as this hand because they belong to one. So God himself is expressing himself as both the matter and spirit. Therefore, both of them are beginningless. Whereas Sankhyans won't accept. Hey, no. There is no common element. Independently they are anadi. Independently they are beginningless. So yoga is where they try to make sure that Purusha recognizes itself independent of matter, and that realization is called enlightenment. So enlightenment, according to yoga philosophy, is where the Purusha, the spirit, remains independent of the matter, and that enlightened state is Kaivalya Mukti. Kaivalya means alone, being independent. That's the last part of it, Kaivalya Pada. So yoga has to give the methodology of reaching there. This yoga, the methodology or practice of Sankhyan system, was founded by Patanjali. While Kapila Muni's Kapila Muni's Sankhya system was 16th century BC. But Patanjali is said to be, most scholars accept, is 2nd century BC. Strangely, I found, after researching to some extent, Patanjali was born in Trikonamale. It's in Sri Lanka. Very interesting point. Trikona means three corners. And the triangle. The triangle representing Trigunas. He is born there. Meaning he had his original birth there, and from there, of course, it's part of the Bharatavarsha at that time. And then from there he developed this system of yoga. Patanjali not necessarily be one person, because later on we find the one who wrote the Sanskrit grammar was also Patanjali. So like Vyasa is also not a person, it's a tradition. Patanjali is also a tradition. A series of people having the same name Patanjali have worked on different things. Similar to Vyasa is not one single individual, But a series of great personalities who came, like Shankaracharya, what we say, is not necessarily only Adi Shankaracharya. In present day, head of Sringeri is also called Shankaracharya, or Puri is also called Shankaracharya. So Shankaracharya Kritam does not mean Adi Shankaracharya alone. Like for example, people ask Guru Paduka Stotram, Shankaracharya Kritam. No, it was done by a scholar, a Shankaracharya from Puri. So you will find the Vyasa Krita when you say, it's not necessarily Veda Vyasa. Okay, let's come to that. Patanjali, therefore, original one who founded the philosophy of yoga, 2nd century BC. So now let us come to the point of yoga. As I said, Patanjali wrote these aphorisms on yoga. And the first sutra, what we find in the Samadhipada, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga, a definition of yoga. Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Stopping the modification of thoughts. Chitta Vritti. Vritti is thought, Chitta is mind. So, mind's modification is called thought. Stopping of thoughts. Now, I am not going into that because that is not the focus now. In this section, in this series of talks, we will be doing the second section, which is known as Sadhana Pada, the practice. Now, in that sutra, there is a commentary written by Vyasa, which is what I basically would be referring to. It is attributed to Veda Vyasa. Again, we do not know which Vyasa wrote it. But the way of the Bhashya or commentary, very authentic one. There, the simple definition he gives is Yoga Samadhi. Yoga is basically practice of concentration. One should recognize that. Practice of concentration. Now here he says, there are 5 aspects of our mind, everybody's mind. Kshiptam, Moodam, Vikshiptam, Ekagram, Niruddhamidi, Chitta Bhumaya. 5 different aspects of the mind. We all will recognize this. First nature of the mind is restlessness. Krishna also, Arjuna also asked this in Bhagavad Gita. My mind is so restless. What do I do? It's a very practical question. Monkey, man ki baat hai. Monkey, mind is mind, is like monkey. It can never stay in one place. Just watch yourself. When you are doing nothing, just watch. It will never stay in one subject. Even when you go to a party, they will start with, nowadays it's getting too hot. Isn't it? I think it is all global warming. I know it's global warming. Okay, whatever it is. And I think, we need a lot of, everywhere we go, I think, a lot of power and electricity are being consumed. They have shut down one nuclear plant recently there. Why did you do that? I think it is all economy. Then you go to politics, then you go to India, and then go on, and then finally you find where we start. It's all hot. Within an hour you cover the entire international politics and you come back to yourself. Because it's time for dinner. While eating again another subject starts and it goes on and everybody is talking. Because the mind can never stay in one thing. Only time when your mind is quiet and restful is when you go to sleep. Otherwise it is constantly remaining restless. That is called chanchal. Chanchalati, keep moving. So mind is a constant shifting movement of thoughts. You cannot help it. That is the nature of it. So this is known as the first nature of the mind called kshiptam. In Sanskrit, kshipt means to throw. It keeps throwing you here and there. Vikshepa, next one is coming later on. Vividam kshipati. That's called distraction. So the mind is not remaining in one condition, it's called kshipta. That is the first condition of the mind. Second one is called moodham. Dull. Many of the parents come and say, Swamiji, my child has no motivation at all. He doesn't study at all. She doesn't study at all. Loss of interest. Why? Because love is not there. When you don't take interest in something, when you do not have love for what you do, then with respect to that, dull. So many of us read many things, but how much we retain? You watch so many things in the TV. How much you retain? Those ads, when you go on and on and on, again, that's why they repeat again and again. Why? Dull you are. Once I tell you, you don't understand. I will have to tell you 100 times. That's why the marketing technique is go on repeating again and again and again and again and again. So dullness is where the attention is not there. Stupefied, preoccupied. So one is restlessness. Never stay on one thing. Second is not paying attention. After the end of 1 hour of talk, I'll ask you, okay, tell me what did I say today? I don't ask you, so don't worry about it. But if I ask you, definitely you will not say more than 5 minutes. Say anything further. I think you said something, some joke you said, or some statement, one or two statements. You cannot, say the whole thing. Why? Because few of the things only we retain. Most of them it goes somewhere else. Because mind is somewhere else sometimes. Or mind is dull. Oh, I had my dinner as Swamiji, I am very tired, and the whole day I was working, especially Friday. TGIF actually, but anyway I came to your talk. So, stupefied, dull-witted, not paying attention. The third one is called vikshipta, distracted. When you're doing something else becomes more important. Oh, that happens to me very often. And nowadays we have enough distractions. Cell phone is there, TV is there, computer is there, Twitter is there, Facebook is there, messages are there. So many different distractions. On the other day, there was a program here, a thread ceremony, and some of them were chanting very seriously. And one young boy was sitting right next to them playing games. He cannot be distracted at all. I got distracted. I was wondering what is he doing seriously. That's why he's wearing a traditional dress, But so mind is attracted to something else. Even if so many other things are going on, mind is somewhere else. That is called vividam kshipati. It's a vikshipta means distracted. The fourth aspect of the mind is called ekagrata, one-pointedness. Meaning paying attention and full concentration. Fourth one, ekagrata. And the fifth one is known as niruddha, stop. The mind is stopped, no thoughts. Now, first three we are all very familiar. I think Kshiptam, Moodha, Vikshipta, these three we know, meaning restlessness, dull-wittedness and distraction. The practice is about, that is last two, Ekagrata and Niruddham. So the first sutra is about Yogaha Chittavritti That is the ultimate goal. Stop the mind. When the mind is restless, you cannot stop it. When the mind is stupefied or dull-witted, you cannot stop it. When the mind is distracted, you cannot stop it. The only practice that you can do to make the mind stop is ekagrata. Now, interestingly, what we find, a restless mind also can, to some extent, concentrate. A restless mind is moving here and there, and suddenly you find a TV program is about something which you are interested in. You pay attention, but not for a long time, temporarily, momentarily. So there is a concentration there, but that is not called yoga. The second one is mind dull-witted, sensuousness. And when you are engaging, enjoying your food, wow, what a concentration you find. Swamiji, that rasagulla. You close your eyes and one pointed attention on the taste that you, or somebody who is smoking. Then also you will find concentration, but that is not yoga. When you are doing puja, let us say, when you are doing a worship, when you are doing a prayer, or when you are here, this is called vikshipta chintana. So in the vikshipta time also, where the mind is otherwise restless, otherwise distracted, when you are here sitting or listening to something, or listening to music, or reading a book, there is a concentration. That is not yoga. So yoga you cannot say wherever the mind is concentrated, there is yoga. No. Some people ask this question, Swamiji, when I am sitting there listening to your class or reading a book, I am so concentrated. Is it yoga? No, that is not. So in the case of ekagrata, it is a single thought or thoughts about a single object consistently coming one after another. That is what is called ekagrata. Sri Ramana Maharshi says in Upadeshara, Ajyadaraya Shrotasa Samam Sarala Chintanam Viralada Param. Sarala Chintanam, a spontaneous, effortless, continuous, similar thoughts. That is called ekagrata. So when you are doing Abhishekam for Lord Shiva, it is an external symbolic representation of this single flow of thoughts continuously being poured onto the Lord. So when you are pouring a milk or pouring a ghee or pouring something, it's a constant movement of, you don't even know, sometimes it's like a stick. Especially when you are pouring the butter when it's made into a liquid, and when you are pouring it, you will not even see that where it begins and where it ends. In the same way, when the mind has a constant flow of similar thoughts, that is called eka agrata. Agrata means concentration. Eka, one pointed. Just like an arrow, which is straight. Similarly, the mind is straight, no distraction, not dull-witted, no restlessness. One-pointedly it is going in one direction. So when you practice pranayama, or when you practice any asana, the yoga teacher will say, come on now, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, inhale, exhale, in heaven, exhale. Because in hell you don't want to say. Because in hell, why do you want to say in hell? In heaven, exhale. So inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Why you pay attention only to any other thought you don't keep in your mind. What is that? Ekagra. One-pointedness. Just like the sunlight is distracted, when you may put a convex lens and then focus it, it will burn anything. Why? Focus. Light is the same, sunlight is the same, but when focused, how much power it has got. In the same way, mind has that power of focus or concentration. Ekagrata. This leads to samprajnata samadhi. So, this practice of ekagrata, until then there is no, see, first three as I said, there is no need to practice. That is the nature of the mind. The fourth one requires practice. And that leads to the fifth one, samadhi, which is, the essential nature is niruddham, stop. So, when the thoughts of the similar nature moving in one direction continuously, at some point of time, the attention from the object of concentration to the subject of concentration. The shift takes place. From the object of your thought to the subject of the thought, to the observer. Then, thought stops. Because the object of the thought, please pay attention, object of your thought merges into the subject of the thought. Or other words, subject becomes the object of your thought. Now if I am looking at a picture, the subject and picture becomes object. When the object is, the subject is made, understood as one, then object disappears. Subject alone remains. But not sleeping, because that is overcome already. That's where we will talk about that. What are the kleshas? So then the individual comes to recognize the observer without nothing to observe. The observer and the observed are becoming one. That is samprajnata samadhi. There, niruddham, the total stoppage of the mind takes place. That is the fifth state of mind. So it is said, a person who has mastered this ability to remain without the thought, stopping of the thought, he has reached the state of enlightenment where an individual, when he comes back to the world, he recognizes that I am independent of this matter. He is called Jivan Mukta, a liberated soul. Liberated from what? Liberated from attachment and connection to the matter. Not that matter has disappeared from him, but he has no more interest with respect to relating with the matter. And nothing he can gain out of that matter anymore. He knows the impermanency and then temporary nature of the matter, and therefore he doesn't engage in deriving anything from the matter anymore. He's lost interest. Kaivalya, alone. So this is what the yoga prescribes. That is considered as the Kaivalya Dhama, the state of oneness, the state of being the Purusha, independent of the Prakriti. So this is where the yoga comes into a play in making Sankhyan system or philosophy into practice. That is what Patanjali has contributed to the world of philosophy. Now, in the second section, which is what we are going to focus, Sadhanapada, on practice, the beginning itself, Vyasa makes this clear, Na atapasvino yoga siddhyati. For a person who does not practice, samadhi is not possible. Atapasvinaha yoga na siddhyati. Samadhi na siddhyati. Samadhi cannot be gained by the person who has not practiced. The mind being of the nature of restlessness, dull-wittedness, distraction, if these three are not overcome, when ekagrata or the one-pointed concentration is not practiced, the fifth one cannot be reached. Therefore, it is essential we should know what are the things that we need to do to overcome the first three conditions. Restlessness and distraction is of the nature of rajas. Dull-wittedness is tamas. One has to overcome the rajas and tamas. Now, interestingly, what we find is, many people say, oh, Sankhyan system is different and yoga system is different, they have no connection. No. Krishna himself clarifies that Sankhya Yoga Pradak Balaha Pravadanti Na Panditaha Egamapyastita Sammityu Ubayor Vindade Phalam Yetsankhe Prapyade Sthanam Tat Yogairami Gamyade. That is, whatever is achieved by the Sankhyan system is achieved by the yoga also. Yetsankhehi, by those people practicing Sankhya Yoga. Prapyade, whatever is obtained. Tat yogaihi api, that is yoga people also can reach there. Ekam Sankhyam cha yogam cha. Yappashyati sapashyati. Now, what is the contradiction here? He says, according to the Sankhya and Yoga systems, which I said non-Vedic tradition, both are complementary. Theory complements the practice, practice complements the theory. But Krishna says there, a person who has gained the correct knowledge through Sankhyan system, through sannyasa he can reach there. No need for practice. Please pay attention here. In the path of knowledge, understanding the impermanent nature of matter with a pure mind is sufficient to reach samadhi. It is not necessary for the person to practice one-pointed attention, withdrawing the senses and staying in a lonely place and withdrawing from the world. No. Just in his own discriminative knowledge, one who has understood the false nature of the world, understanding that itself is sufficient. But prerequisite is purity of mind. Mind has to be absolutely without the stink of vasana. Clean. Mind is not at all influenced by the inherent tendencies. But then we know. That is why Krishna later on clearly clarifies in 12th chapter, Kleshaha adhikatarastesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gadir dukkam dehavad viravapyate. So long as you consider yourself as a physical body, impurity is for certain. You cannot really use only Sankhya Yoga, Sannyasa Yoga to reach there. Why? Because you think you are the body. Dehavadbihi, those who think they are the body, it is klesha adhigataraha. Klesha means the impurities are very, very high. So it's a very, very rare individual who is born with no tendencies, no impressions of the past, no impurities of the mind, who by mere knowledge he can reach there. Very rare. But that possibility is there. That's what he is trying to point out. There is a possibility that an individual with absolute purity, knowledge alone is sufficient. For most of us, 99.9%. Those who have knowledge, all right, but the idea that I am an individual, I am a being, I am a born individual, this is my wife, this is my brother, this is my sister, this is my husband, all that relationship, and I want this, I don't want this, and all these various likes and dislikes, it's not easy. Only knowledge will not help. So he clarifies, Yetsankhehi prapyade sthanam tat yogeira vigamyati. Ekam sankyam cha yogam cha. Yappashyati sapashyati. So therefore, for most of us who have the misconception that we are this matter, physical body, we need something to do. Knowledge alone will not do. That's why yoga becoming more and more popular nowadays, because people realize Knowledge I have got, understanding I have, but it doesn't become an experience. It's like you read a recipe book, but food is not. And one lady went and newly married, and then she was given this recipe book by somebody. She opened the book, and the husband is waiting for food. She put everything on the stove and then went on, waited for 2-3 hours. Nothing happened. The husband was so restless. What happened? No, I am just following the recipe book. And he came and looked at it. What is written there? They put the vegetables and oil and everything there, put on the stove, and then wait for something. It will get cooked and all those things. Then he looked down. It was not even put on at all. The stove is not on. Because that is not written there in the book. Put the stove on. That is not there. It is understood that if you put on the stove, you should put the fire also on. Sometimes we find that we do everything but nothing happens. Some key elements we are missing. Something which is very important we are missing there. What is it? Impurities of the mind. So long as these impurities called kleshas. In Sanskrit the word klish, from there it comes, the root word klish. Klish means to have pain, to suffer, to torment, to agitate, or withering away, waning. Like if there is a garland is there, when the flowers are all withering away, it's called klishta mala. Klishta mala. Meaning, mala has no more mala anymore. Because it has lost its beauty of being a mala, because everything is gone. If the cloth is there and it is dirty, it's called klishta. Become impure, tainted, soiled. Klishtam jalam, klishtam pushpam, meaning the flower anymore, no more is a flower because it has lost its beauty. The water is polluted. Similarly, Purusha here is presently Klishta. Klishtaha Purushaha. Why? The individual here is now impure. The Purusha is now associated with the impurities of the matter. Therefore, we should know how to get rid of the impurities. So long as these, what are the impurities? Essentially, they emerge from the impressions. The potential or latent impressions that are there within us, which stem forth in the form of impure thoughts. Those impurities have to be overcome. So, this methodology of overcoming the impurities is known as Kriya Yoga. Technically, in the yoga tradition, that is known as Kriya. Kriya means activity. An activity leading to yoga. A set of activities that can lead to yoga. So, the first sutra in the second section, Sadhana Pada is Tapaswadhyaya Ishvara Pranidanani Kriya Yoga. Tapaha Swadhyaya Ishvara Pranidanani Kriya Yoga. The practice is of broadly 3 points. Tapas, Swadhyaya, and Ishvara Pranidhana. In English, austerity, tapas, study, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana, surrendering to God, surrendering to something higher, greater, supreme, goal, destination. These 3 are referred as. Now, interestingly, what we find, as I said, in Sankhyan system, it is Anishvaravada, no Ishvara is involved, while in Yoga, Patanjali introduces the idea of Ishvara. It is very interesting to point that Sankhyans do not believe in existence of God, only Purusha and Prakriti, spirit and the matter, While yoga system includes the God principle, and they say that unless one has the reverential attitude towards God, the impurities will not go away. There is the element of devotion included there in yoga. So, tapaha, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana, surrender. Pranidhana, dha in Sanskrit means to place. Nidhana, placement. Prani, falling or fully. Prakarshena, nidhanam. Pranidhanam. So, completely, fully surrendering to God. That's the third aspect. Swa-adhyaya, study of oneself, studying by oneself. It is two aspects, studying a book, studying oneself, both. And then, first one is tapas, austerity. Tapas svadhyaya ishvara pranidhanani kriya yoga. This is. So, the tapas is physical, swadhyaya is vocal, ishvara pranidhana is mental. Three aspects of kaya, vang, man. Three aspects of our personality have to be purified. Body, speech, mind. Because these three are the ones we use constantly for engaging in this world, and most problems come from these three only. Right? Physically we are doing something wrong, or the terrible thing called tongue. The third one is this mind. These are the three things which can potentially express impurities or create impurities. Now, when you use the word Kriya Yoga, it is different from Karma Yoga. Please understand this point clearly. In Gita, Krishna calls it as Karma Yoga. There, Karma Yoga is also used for purifying the mind. Tasmad asakta sadadam karyam karma samachara asakto hi acharan karma paramapnodi purusha. Krishna says, therefore, detachedly when you work in this world, O Arjuna, your mind will become pure and you will reach the highest. There he is talking about Karma Yoga, doing your work with an attitude of surrender to God, and because of which you don't expect results. And because of the absence of anxiety for the results, mind becomes calm, one-pointed, attitude of service, without any idea of owning up the results or owning up the doership, then you evolve to become a pure person. Here, Kriya Yoga is not about doing anything of that kind. It is exclusively a practice which you do for your own self. It is not about doing your work in the world outside. That is not included here. Here it is about niyama, ayama, niyama, asana, pranayama, prati. It's all about what one can do to oneself. It is not about what you do as your work outside this world. That's not included here. That's the difference between karma, where it includes the world, kriya, which includes only oneself. That's why it's called kriya yoga. Alright. Now, let us look at tapas. Oh, time is up. We have to do it tomorrow. So we'll take it up. What are the tapaha, swadhyaya and ishvara pranidhan, and what are the kleshas, or what are the impurities, and each one of them of the impurities, what are their impacts in our life, and how we can overcome. That's what we are going to see. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkhavat bhaved. Om shanti shanti shanti. Hari Om.